Well, I think I am. I hope I was the first national host to endorse Lynn Cheney for the Senate in Wyoming. But whatever. Maybe I'm number 2 or 3. But I think Liz Cheney would be a dynamic, vibrant, fresh face in the United States Senate, a fighter. I'm a big fan of hers. And Lynn Cheney, how are you, my friend?
Listen, I am doing great, Mark. And let me tell you that you were number 1. And
Damn right.
I appreciate that very much.
Well, I am a huge fan of the Cheney family, period. But you would be terrific in the United States Senate. I really feel, Liz Cheney, it is time for some, fresh faces, fresh voices, people who are prepared to fight, not with the go-along crowd, who see the perilous state the nation is in. And your opponent is a nice enough person, but the fact of the matter is the guy is not a standout, and that's why so many in Washington are backing him and so many outside of Washington are backing you.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that very much. And, I tell folks my decision to get into this race was certainly not personal. I have a lot of respect for Senator Enzi, but we just can't keep going along to get along. And he's been in office for 18 years now. And for the last 5 under this president, the people of Wyoming have been really ground zero for the assault on our liberty, the assault on our freedom, on our constitutional rights. And it's time for us to stand up and fight back, something you know so well, and I know you do every day. But we really have to elect some new folks who are going to go to Washington and lead the effort to get this federal government under control and really, draw the line, push back this president's policies until we can get a new president in office come 2017.
Liz Cheney, I noticed, really out of the blue, all of a sudden, Senator Enzi is being credited with noticing that we would all lose, or many of us would lose, our insurance policies if Obamacare is passed. Was he the only one who figured that out?
Well, I don't know if he was the only one. My view of that is that we don't elect senators to go back to Washington and predict problems. We elect them to go back there and solve problems. And so simply alerting people to the fact, having read the Federal Register and alerting folks to the fact that their insurance was going to be at risk is not enough. You got to be able to take action that actually will help to prevent those kinds of harm, that kind of danger to your constituents. And he wasn't able to do anything that prevented a single person here in Wyoming from losing their insurance. The other thing I'd say about that is, Senator Enzi was part of the Gang of Six. And that's a place where there's a real difference between his approach and mine. For months after months back in 2009, he negotiated with the president over Obamacare and with the president's liberal allies and really gave the president cover. Allowed him to say that he had Republicans with him, that it wasn't a partisan affair, it wasn't a partisan effort. I think it's, as though the president and his allies walked into the room one day and said, we've got this massive new federal program we're going to impose on everybody and take over 1/6 of the economy. And Senator Enzi's response was, well, okay, where do I negotiate on that? The response that we should have had, that we would have had if I had been there, would have been not only no, but hell no. We're not going down that path. We got to draw the line, and this is a place certainly where we should have drawn the line.
Well, I'm not familiar with this. Did he propose any amendments or anything of the sort to try and address the problem that he noticed?
He did propose legislation, which failed. And, that's when you sort of listen to his explanation for a number of problems we've got now. When you say, well, why haven't you protected the people of Wyoming? The answer that comes back is, well, I tried. And, my view is that's just not good enough, particularly when you were there in the beginning, helping to facilitate the president's efforts to impose this mess on all of us. And, you can't be in a situation where you don't know when to draw the line. And when you begin to negotiate about our freedoms, and negotiating over Obamacare was certainly negotiating for, over our fundamental freedoms.
Were you surprised at the initial torrent of attacks on you from the establishment and the dug-in crowd of Washington? Were you even suggested you might enter a primary and challenge somebody? Why do these people fear these primaries?
I think that as a party, we've got ourselves into a real bad place. When you've got groups like the National Republican Senatorial Committee, and their whole job is to protect incumbents, that tells you we got big problems in our party. I don't think that you should vote for somebody simply because they're an incumbent, and I don't think you should vote for somebody simply because they're an insurgent. And when, the central organization in the United States Senate that's tasked with helping to elect Republicans sees its mission as being an incumbent protection agency, we got a real problem. We need to be able in our party to say, now is the time for a new generation. Who's going to be the best person going forward to represent the future of this party? Who are going to be the best people for the nation and for their individual states, and not just, we're going to dig in here and make sure everybody who's an incumbent gets our support. That's a recipe for a lot of lost elections.
And your website is cheneyforwyoming.com, cheneyforwyoming.com. Anybody who wants to help you with resources and so forth should go there. Mr. Producer, let's put that on my social site so people can take it if they wish to. So what are the three most important issues right now, do you think, for the people of Wyoming in this race?
Well, I think, first of all, thank you very much for mentioning the website. I appreciate that, Mark. Number one is rolling back the federal government, and that encompasses, as you know, so many different sets of issues. Many of them are issues you talk about in the Liberty Amendment, but just, doing everything we can to get back to the place where we are all focused on the enumerated powers. Those are the powers the federal government exercises, and we return the other powers to the states and to the people. What that means for us here in Wyoming is getting agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency under control, doing everything you can, to eliminate them. I love your idea, Mark, that, agencies, have to justify themselves every 3 years. And what you've got now is a whole bunch of legislation, the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act and the Endangered Species Act, which have become so barnacled with regulation. They've enabled agencies like the EPA and the BLM to run roughshod over our private property rights out here, over our constitutional rights, to make it nearly impossible for folks to run family ranches, to make it impossible in many cases to, get permits to drill for oil or natural gas on public land. So it's a real problem, and that's the biggest issue that we face in all the different aspects of how do we reduce the power of these agencies, how do we get them to stop playing an unconstitutional role in our lives, how do we protect the private property rights and the constitutional rights of individuals out here. Lowering taxes is another big piece of that, obviously. Another big difference between Senator Enzi and myself is his signature piece of legislation is the Internet sales tax, where he reached across the aisle and found Dick Durbin, one of the most liberal members of the United States Senate, and put in place this piece of legislation that will require every single Internet business to be subject to audit, not just by every state in the country, but by 9,600 different jurisdictions and every Indian tribe in the country.
Let's stop right there. This is very important to the people of Wyoming and nationwide. One of the bright spots in our economy is our technological advances. And this is one of the great advances now, the Internet and online shopping and so forth. And Washington should keep its hands off of it. And Enzi's leading the fight to tax it and regulate it.
Exactly. No, you're exactly right. And it's especially heartbreaking because he's selling this as a way to help our bricks and mortar businesses on Main Street. And the reason why it's heartbreaking is it won't help them. The way to help them is to lower their tax burden, not to tax the most innovative sector of the economy that we've got going today. And I just don't think Wyoming senators should be looking for ways to take money out of the pockets of the people of Wyoming. I think that's it's a very odd priority, isn't it? It is, and I don't understand why. If you look at the entire record, that's the one thing that he would say is his hallmark accomplishment. And to me, that just look. I think there are two kinds of people in policy and politics today. Either you think that we need to be looking for ways to tax people more, to give the government more of our money, or you believe we're taxed enough already. I certainly believe we're taxed enough already. We're taxed more than enough already. And Senator Enzi has put himself into that first camp with this piece of legislation. Now, your dad and your mom, are they able to campaign for you? Are they campaigning for you in Wyoming? Well, they're totally 100% supportive, extremely excited about this race, and giving me great advice. And but I'm really dedicated to doing this on my own and making sure people know this is my race. Wyoming is a wonderful place where we still do politics the way they ought to be done. It's grassroots, one vote at a time. Getting out, talking to people all over the state about the race. It's a lot of miles. We've got about 100,000 square miles in Wyoming and about 110,000 voters in a Republican primary. So you get a lot of windshield time, but it's really all about person-to-person campaigning, and I'm really committed to doing it on my own and to doing it the way it ought to be done.
Well, based on what we've discussed, I know you're committed to a constitutional agenda, a solid, traditional, Reaganite conservative agenda, and you have my wholehearted support, and I hope the folks in Wyoming will send us some help in the name of Liz Cheney. And again, the website is cheneyforwyoming.com, cheneyforwyoming.com. Folks, if you can give her a hand, she needs it because the establishment's funding her opponent. Liz Cheney, we'll have you back, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Thanks so much for the endorsement and all the help and support, and please keep fighting the good fight and producing wonderful books like the Liberty Amendments, which are just, it's a terrific set of ideas that lay out a way that we can actually get back to the constitutional framework we all deserve to be living under. So thanks for everything you do too, Mark.
Well, you're very kind. God bless you. Be safe out there.
You too.
All right, that's Liz Cheney, cheneyforwyoming.com. She'd be great. And we're going to look at some more of these races too. And I'm going to be endorsing other people, which will make me increasingly unpopular in Washington, D.C., and ask me if I care.